In this video, I will explain how to find the inverse demand function given the demand function. So let's check out an example. Let's say we're given the following demand function. The quantity demanded is equal to 120 minus 4 times P, where P is the price. To find the inverse of this demand function, all we have to do is solve this equation for P. In other words, we want to get P all by itself. So here's how we would do that. In this case, we could start by adding a 4P to both sides, because we'll notice on this right-hand side, now we have a negative 4P and a positive 4P, so these cancel out. On this left-hand side, we're left with quantity demanded plus 4P is equal to 120. Next, we can subtract quantity demanded from each side. Now on this left-hand side, these quantity demandeds cancel out, and we're left with 4P is equal to 120 minus QD, quantity demanded. And then the last step to get P all by itself, notice we have a 4 out front. So we need to divide all of these terms by 4. So we'll divide all of these by 4. And when we do that, on this left-hand side, we're left with P is equal to 120 divided by 4, that's 30, minus, here we have QD divided by 4. So if we want to imagine that there's a little 1 out front in front of this quantity demanded, that turns out to be 1 over 4 times quantity demanded. And typically when we're writing an inverse demand function, we want to express a fraction as a decimal if we can. So negative 1/4 is the same as negative 0.25. So our final inverse demand function is going to be 30 minus 0.25 times quantity demanded. So this is our inverse demand function. Now, one thing worth noting is that the demand function and the inverse demand function are the exact same function. The terms are just rearranged in different orders. So in the demand function, we have quantity as a function of price. So as the price changes, the quantity is changing. But in the inverse demand function, we have price as a function of quantity. So as quantity demanded changes, the price changes. Now, one reason that you might actually calculate the inverse demand function in the first place is because when we graph demand and supply functions, on the y-axis we always use price, and on the x-axis we always use quantity. And typically when we graph lines, we use the form y equals mx plus b, which the inverse demand function is in the format of y equals mx plus b, where b is 30 in this case, and this is the y-intercept. So when we go to graph the demand function, let's say it looks something like this, the y-intercept right here, that would be 30 for this particular demand function. And the slope of this line is negative 0.25. So the line that we actually graph when we're graphing the demand function, it's represented by this equation, the inverse demand function, where price is our y variable and quantity demanded is our x variable. So that was just a quick example of how to calculate the inverse demand function. Just take your ordinary demand function and solve for P.